So Johnny Walker shaves his mustache to look like Khamzat, does the fake touch, and immediately ends up on bottom. That's about the most Johnny Walker thing you can do. If you missed it, UFC Shanghai, I don't blame you. It was at 2 a.m. the card started, and I'll be honest, I had work, so I had to watch it after the fact. But I watched it nonetheless, and Johnny Walker defeated Mingyang, and it was a Johnny Walker performance. It's just one of those fights that you're like, okay, that is about as Johnny Walker as it gets. Again, he shaves the mustache, guys, and then he fakes the glove touch, and then he shoots the takedown and ends up on bottom with Zhang on top of him. Horrible position to be in if you're Johnny Walker. Like, I mean, that's just as bad as it gets. You can't just give up bottom, man. That was terrible. And then again, Brian Ortega just gave up bottom, and he did just fine. But yeah, Zhang Mingyang is supposed to be a homecoming. I mean, we saw what they were trying to do with this card. We saw that it was like, oh, okay, yeah, you know, you want to make Zhang Mingyang a star, and you're gonna do it in front of China and his home country, and yeah, Johnny Walker has other plans, and he's always dangerous though. And it's weird because he wins fights he shouldn't. Like the Khalil Roundtree fight was one he should have never really won, and here we are. You know, Johnny Walker has a win over former title challenger Khalil Roundtree. But yeah, all night, most of the fight really, Zhang Mingyang had Johnny Walker on his back foot. Really was kind of pushing the pace and kind of walking down Johnny Walker, which pun intended, I guess. And you know, it was one of those performances was like, I don't take this as one that, you know, Johnny Walker won, because if you didn't see it, Walker lands a kick, Zhang Mingyang steps back on his foot, and something in his knee gives. His knee gives, and Johnny Walker storms. But I don't take this as much as a Johnny Walker win as much as like a Zhang Mingyang loss. Like, Johnny Walker didn't actually win this. It's just Zhang Mingyang's body kind of gave up on him. It was weird. Now, Walker did have some good front kicks, some good low kicks. You know, he really was kind of folding over Zhang Mingyang when it comes to that. But I think the best part of the fight for Johnny Walker really was how he kind of swarmed on him. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and pull this out right here. We're going to talk about Jack Dempsey today. About Johnny Walker and Jack Dempsey. What? No, seriously though, this book description, links down there. But in A Flame of Pure Fire, they talk about Jack Dempsey, and he's talking about the street fights and growing up. And he says, you don't win on points. There's no let up until someone is knocked out or beaten up so badly that he quits. Sometimes bystanders or police break up street fight. I told you I can't count on bystanders. You can't rely on the police either. This isn't a street fight, really. This is MMA, and it's a close approximation of a street fight. You have to let the ref save you. So Johnny Walker absolutely could count on a bystander, unlike, you know, Jack Dempsey, like in the description. You know, he makes sure when he finds a finish, like he's got the wonky noodle arms when he's hammer fisting, and of course there was some hammer fist to the back of the head, but I'm not gonna harp on that, because it's like Zhang Mingyang's moving. Can he get up? You know, he managed to get up to a knee. I think he got up actually at one point. So, you know, it was one of those fights where I'm like, you know, it could be better. I thought Johnny Walker, you know, he did what he had to do, but like, this isn't a real win on Johnny Walker. It's kind of like Curtis Blaydes went over Tom Aspinall, where Aspinall hurts his knee. You know, it's like that. Or when Alexander Rakic hurt his knee and lost to Ankalaev. Like, yeah, you won, but did you really? Now, Zhang Mingyang, he looked like a fighter straight out of 2010. He's walking, got his hands up like he's boxing. Basic boxing, you know, he's walking to Johnny Walker. He's not cutting the cage off, and that allowed Johnny Walker to get out and keep Zhang Mingyang coming to him, which is what Johnny Walker wants. He wants you to walk onto a counter. That's kind of his whole MO. But you know, he's only 27. There's plenty of time to rebound, especially at like light heavyweight, which is like the worst, or one of the worst divisions in the UFC. He has time to rebound. He needs to get better. He needs to work on his ring awareness and his cage cutting to make sure that he can use those God-given gifts of left and rights to knock people out. Like, he's so good. He's got so much power, and he's relied on it for so long. But there's going to be a time, and this isn't that time, by the way. Him losing to Johnny Walker is not that time, but there's going to be a time to where somebody takes him deep, and it's like, okay, like, what's going to happen when Ankalaev takes you deep, or or an Alex Pereira takes you deep, and you're like, I don't know what to do here. Or Yuri Prohaska, what happens if he drowns him? So he needs to work on that and the ability to cut off the cage and to conserve energy properly. He does that fairly well. I'll give him that. Zhang Mingyang really does conserve his energy very well. But there's plenty of time to make a title run, to improve to where he can make that title run. And in light heavyweight, it doesn't take much, man. It doesn't it doesn't mean he's never coming back, because he will. He has a lot of work to do, though. Ring cutting is bad. His shot selection is okay. He does get a little wild and crazy at times. And think back to like Dustin Poirier and the Eddie Alvarez 1 and 2 fights. Like, he was swinging wild, and Poirier had to talk about how he had to improve his shot selection and make sure he wasn't just going ham and gassing himself, because ultimately that's what happened in the Eddie Alvarez fight. And we saw that once he went and fought Justin Gaethje, and then the rematch with Eddie Alvarez, or the Anthony Pettis fight. Like, Poirier, when he starts hunting the finish, Conor McGregor later, like, he starts hunting the finish, it's not that he's like going crazy, and I'd like to see that from Zhang Mingyang going forward here. So I think seeing that he's not invincible is going to really do him well. I think that's going to show Zhang Mingyang, and he has several losses before, but like he's developed this long win streak of knockouts, first and second round knockouts, that he needs to know, like, hey, you haven't figured it out. Like, you're fighting top level competition now. They'll figure you out. And Johnny Walker, as chinny as he is, and as tailor-made of a fight this was for Zhang Mingyang, Walker found a way to win it. Like, he didn't let Zhang Mingyang off the hook when he hurt himself. So that was great. Now, what's next for Johnny Walker? Who's next? I really like the Yuri Prohaska fight, just for the memes. Like, how crazy would it be for a Yuri Prohaska Johnny Walker fight? It would be the goofiest fight of all time. The Bushido versus, I guess Johnny Walker would adopt a Bushido approach too. It'd be cool to see how Yuri Prohaska deals with somebody that's 6'7" or however tall Johnny Walker is. It'd also be cool to see, just how hard Yuri hits, because there's some people that believe he is the heaviest hitter of all time. He has more knockouts than anybody, but I give that to level of competition. There's also the Khalil Roundtree rematch. I like that one a lot. Khalil Rountree's improved a lot as a fighter since they both fought. If you remember, that was the one where Johnny Walker caught the tie clinch, kneed him, and then boom, elbow over to the side and knocked him out. I'd like to see a rematch of that, just to kind of keep the division going, give Khalil a fight, and and then another one's Bogdan Guskov. Guskov's on a really good run. Anthony Smith beat Anthony Smith, which Anthony Smith, but it would be cool to see, Guskov kind of get an opportunity at a higher ranked fighter, one that can go out there and wrestle, and one that's going to fake glove touch and shoot the takedown. See what Guskov can do. He's only 4-1 as a fighter, kickboxer before that. So yeah, overall though, I'm happy with Johnny Walker winning. I really was hoping for Zhang Mingyang. I thought he'd be a fresh addition to an aging and old light heavyweight division. But at the end of the day, it's not. That's just how the cookie crumbles, the method in which the pastry disintegrates. So good on Johnny Walker, and Zhang Mingyang. Hope he recovers and improves going forward. Now in your co-main event, you had Brian Ortega and Aljamain Sterling. Of course, Aljamain Sterling is the former bantamweight champ, and Brian Ortega is the professional get-beater upper. Volkanovski beats him up, Holloway beats him up, Diego Lopez beats him up. Like, he's taking some beatings in his life, and this was an interesting fight to me because of Sterling's wrestling ability. And I thought it was going to be really fun, in contrast to the very dangerous jiu-jitsu that Brian Ortega has. Didn't turn out to be that, no. But leading up to the fight, there was controversy surrounding everything with Brian Ortega, missing weight, and then them fighting at 153. Aljamain Sterling didn't have much power at 135, so like at 150, basically lightweight. At lightweight, even with the spinning back elbow, Sterling didn't really have as much of a pop as he needed to. And this was a dangerous fight for him because of his wrestling thing. So he had to rely on his striking and his power, but his kicks look good. He caught Ortega like with the spinning back elbow. He was actually joking about it on like Instagram or something. He's all swollen up on his elbow where he landed. Really messed his arm up there like a little bit. It was cool how he kind of made his way out of that. But like, I say he's lacking the power, but also you got to keep in mind, like, Brian Ortega, he's durable. Max Holloway couldn't knock him out. Yair Rodriguez couldn't. He had a shoulder injury. Volkanovski couldn't do it. Ortega's durable. He's really, like I said, he's a professional getter, beater, upper. He's just not very good at winning fights that he should. And it seems like he's on his way out. And it was funny, like leading up to the fight, he was like, "This is going to be one win away from being a title shot," and nobody like really said anything about it. But then Sterling comes in, calls out Volkanovski, and was like, "No, Lerone Murphy deserves it." And it's like, kind of. Ortega's about as good as a Winnepico, but not really. It's a weird situation. But the story with Brian Ortega, honestly, in this fight was just, he threw too little punches. You got to have the volume, especially when you got really good boxing like Ortega does, and his boxing is not bad. It's just the volume that Brian Ortega throws. It's just a struggle for him every single time. He always struggles, and it's just one of those things where he's going to have to get over it and find a way to make it work, because he hasn't been able to make it work since starting in the UFC. It really sucks for him, because it's you got to get it done. You got to go out there and get it done. And like, I can understand not getting the volume against a Max Holloway or even an Alexander Volkanovski, but like, Sterling's going to come in there, he's going to kick, And it's actually something I noticed about Sterling. When he kicks, he's such a good wrestler. He trains with Morab all the time, so he's probably used to his kicks getting caught. So he likes to place his kicks low. That's just a really cool tidbit that I picked up. But again, when you're fighting somebody, and like, especially like Sterling, whose power's not great, you can walk through it. What's he going to do? He's going to choke, or he's going to take you to the ground. God forbid. Brian Ortega can't get takedowns anyway, so why not let Sterling take him down and then find openings that way? But Sterling's striking didn't look terrible. His jab was on point all night. He used his jab very well, and he was dwarfed in that cage too. Like, Ortega looked much bigger than him, even at 153. It was probably a little exaggerated, but it was one of those things where I'm seeing how small Sterling is, the former 135-pound champ, which is understandable. But his boxing was good, and even though it wasn't as good as Ortega's, it was serviceable, and it got the job done. Now, the low kick was his best weapon. As I mentioned, he likes to play some low, and he started to buckle over Ortega a lot as this fight went on, and then kind of abandoned it once he was feeling his hands out and making those reads, and he was feeling himself. It was fun. Opening up later in the fight, really kind of game planned well for Ortega, especially after missing weight. I felt like he wanted to let Ortega get a couple rounds in and then start to really ratchet up the thing. But Ortega was game, man. Even with the terrible weight cut miss, I don't know where he goes from here. Brian Ortega, that is. But yeah, now what I did, hate about this fight was, the very, very little grappling happened in it. Aljamain Sterling had almost 4 minutes of control time. But most of that was like in Brian Ortega's guard. Ortega did a good job of getting back to guard. There was really good takedown where Aljamain Sterling gets a body lock, gets off to the side, and then just sags and takes him down over the knee. He had one of his legs pinched through, and he took him down away from the fence, which is what Ortega wants, but close enough to where he could turn in and stack him up against the fence. Brian Ortega, like Charles Oliveira, likes to find submissions, to create scrambles, to find submissions, right? So he's throwing up an armbar or a triangle, and if he can lock it in on the first try, great. But he wants to catch you in a submission, kind of like Khamzat Chimaev was looking to do versus Dricus du Plessis before du Plessis said, "No, I'm just going to survive." Still hurting over that, by the way. But it was Sterling who really did a good job of keeping position, and in order to stop, especially the first takedown, to stop Brian Ortega, he pushed his head up against the fence on the ground. So Ortega's got guard, and Aljamain Sterling literally turns him into the fence, and Ortega can't throw up submissions from that. It's much harder because he can't create the space he needs. He's pinned up against the fence, and then Sterling's pushing into him. So that really played into his advantage, and it worked. Now, Ortega did a good job. Once Sterling got to like the back and stuff, he would turn in and get on his back, give up, guard, which is where he wants to be. But Ortega did a good job of that, and so did Aljamain Sterling with the grappling. Now, for Sterling in the future, give me like Yair Rodriguez or Arnold Allen. That's kind of my two picks, I guess. There's really nobody else at featherweight, and they might be able to do the Volkanovski fight. There was a really good case for that. Aljamain Sterling is a former champion. He lost to Movsar Evloev, but Evloev, according to like Aaron Pico, like he's out for a while. Something happened. They're not saying what. I don't know if it was an injury or some family or personal issues or what, but Lerone Murphy seemed like to be the one that was next after he knocked out Aaron Pico. But Aljamain Sterling makes a good case. He has way better wins over quality opponents than Lerone Murphy does. So let's go over to the Tapology rankings real quick. I'm gonna take a peek at it. I want to see kind of where they're at. Featherweight, here we go. View division. I don't know why Holloway took Perez in there. They already talked about that. They've got, they got him way above. But like you go look at his run at 125 and it's, or 145. I'm sorry, Calvin Kattar. After lost to Sean O'Malley, a bunch of grappling matches. But he's beating Calvin Kattar and Brian Ortega now. Which, those names are yesterday's popular fighters. Lerone Murphy is, of course, undefeated. But like Josh Emmett and Dan Ige, Edson Barboza, it's like, Kulabau. You can see why he would get it. I like the legacy fight for Sterling, honestly. And I don't think it's the right fight to make, necessarily. But I do think it's a fight that will be made at some point, especially if Volkanovski does end up beating Lerone Murphy. You just go ahead and book it for 3 months later and get you another legacy fight. Sterling versus Volkanovski, like they were champions at the same time. That'd be sick. Now, elsewhere on this card, Sergei Pavlovich defeated Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Cortes-Acosta was on a weird run, but Sergei Pavlovich, obviously the former interim title challenger who lost to Tom Aspinall in 2 weeks' notice, and then to Alexander Volkov via a styling on. He's now won 2 straight fights. Waldo Acosta Cortez is the most recent victim. Waldo Acosta Cortez obviously had a good run going, but now Sergei Pavlovich has beaten Jairzinho Rozenstruik, who just signed to Dirty Boxing, and then Acosta Cortez. Cortez went on a really good run of Lucas Bresky, Arlovsky, Robles Despange, Ryan Spahn, and Sergey Spivak. So that was a good run for him. The Spivak fight was very, very close. I remember that specifically. But good run for him. A lot of people are critical over this Sergei Pavlovich fight. And I can get where they're coming from because it used to be really fun. Cut off the cage and bang them out, I will say, the cage cutting wasn't as good and hasn't been as good in his last 2 fights. But he's worked with what he's got. Waldo Cortes-Acosta is a very, very sneaky good fighter. If you're not careful, he can steal rounds from you with his striking. He's got very, very crafty striking. He's not the best striker, but he's out there and he's good enough to win fights at a high level. His footwork's also very sneaky too, to where he can land combinations. But a lot of people were performance. I thought he looked improved, and I think you can tell that he's working on what he came up short with against Alexander Volkov and kind of the Tom Aspinall, but that was more of a frantic pace type of thing. But you could tell he's trying to improve and trying to be a better fighter, and I feel like he is a better fighter. Sneaky uppercut, which is cool. A lot of the analysts even are like, whatever. He's a Dunzo pass. Like the guy putting down, or the guy looking back with his girlfriend. His girlfriend's Pavlovich, and he's looking back at Tom Aspinall. It's kind of like what everybody's done. I think Sergei Pavlovich is going to be okay. The Rozenstruik was boring, but like that's every Rozenstruik fight. And again, you can tell that Sergei Pavlovich has kind of worked on what he needs to work on and become a better fighter. Volkov picked him apart with the jab, which that's Volkov's game plan. They were sparring partners, and Volkov, he knows how to work the game, and he knows how to win fights. Very, very good veteran. And Pavlovich, veteran in his own right, but not quite to the level that Alexander Volkov, who's been fighting top-level talent for a decade now. I do think in the future a rematch with Tom Aspinall would be warranted with Sergei Pavlovich. I don't think that time is now. It's when at UFC Shanghai it was kind of lackluster, and Waldo Cortes-Acosta is not a name to hang a title shot on. There's others in there that you're like, okay, well this deserves it more. Let's again pull up the rankings. We'll go to UFC rankings actually now. Heavyweight, so you got like Cyril Gane. Volkov's not going to get it. Pavlovich is ranked 3, defended his title. So you got like Curtis Blades you could do if they fought already. Almeida's there. Spivak. See, there's not much. Shamil Gaziev, Mick Parkin, Taliesin Teixeira, maybe. Walter Walker's, on a run up too. But yeah, Pavlovich is gonna have to fight down for some time, and you might see a run like he fights a Almeida, a Tibura, and then a Gaziev or Mick Parkin or Taliesin Teixeira. Did Taliesin Teixeira win his last fight? I don't remember that. Or was he booked? Oh, it was Derek Lewis, and Derek Lewis knocked him out. Duh. That was one of those fraud checks, wasn't it? Yeah, but at the end of the day, this fight, it was just one of those ones where Pavlovich, you could tell he's working on stuff, and he's getting better at it too. Like, there's no denying that he's getting better. He might be stripping out what made him exciting, sure, but will this get him to a title shot in a rematch with Tom Aspinall? Like, it could. 2 wins is all it takes. They rebook or they do a Jelton Almeida fight or book Volkov again, and he makes some adjustments. He can win those fights. So, good on him. What else happened in there? Kevin Borjas lost to Sumerdarji. Kind of sucks because Borjas is a really fun fighter. 10-4 now, but he's just struggling in the UFC. Obviously, Joshua Van is an okay loss, but Alessandro Costa, that's not a good loss. That's not the one that you want. Imagine debuting as Joshua Van. Goodness. Sumerdarji, he looked good. I thought he wasn't terrible in that fight and beat a quality opponent in Kevin Borjas. Let's see. Naraji defeated Kiefer Crosby. Oh, this fight. Yeah. This is a weird one. This is a very weird one because I'm conflicted on it because Naraji had an illegal knee, and it was very clearly it wasn't even borderline. Kiefer Crosby's knee was down. He was on one knee. He was a grounded opponent, and he just whacks him with a knee, and it cuts his eye open. And he's very clearly concussed, and the referee does a good job of forcing taking 2 points from him, sure, but man, Kiefer Crosby didn't take his time to recover. None at all. He wanted to fight. There should have been a no contest or a disqualification, but I'm not big on the DQ because he was hurt. Ref took 2 points, and seconds later it didn't matter. It was a knockout, and it sucks to see a fighter win like that. Everybody gives Aljamain Sterling a lot of flack for winning the title off of literally getting kneed by Petr Yan, but that's the right thing to do. Even just title aside, if it was a no contest, nobody would have had a problem with that, But you don't go back out there and fight if you're concussed like that, man, because you're officially compromised off of an illegal blow. Now, I think grounded knees should be legal because they're super cool and super violent, and it's what makes Kai Asakura very fun. But we're neutering him and obviously Naraji for knees and Petr Yan and all these fighters. So yeah, let's make it not illegal again, I guess. Bring him back. Gage Young defeated Mashiate. Charles Johnson and Lonnie Kavanaugh. This was the other fight that I was really excited for on this card, and Charles Johnson's very, very good and underrated. He's a former boxer. And just like with up-and-coming Joshua Van, Lonnie Kavanaugh got caught, and in round 2, he was knocked out. It's crazy, because Charles Johnson, he's an older guy. He's a veteran. It just, Lonnie Kavanaugh looked very much as advertised. He looks like a world-class prospect, like a Joshua Van, right? And speaking of that, a future Joshua Van versus Lonnie Kavanaugh fight will be great. Now he moves to 9-1 with a loss, and his striking's great. Incredible combinations, varied. His grappling looks good. Even against the fence, you see him tripping off of the fence, something we see Islam Makhachev do a lot of, and even on the ground, he's going to the back. He's going around. He looks like the complete package. But then he gets a little too complacent. That's just what happened. He got complacent. He got complacent early against a very dangerous opponent, Charles Johnson, who can find a win deep with a big punch. Just one big punch is all it took. And He exits with his hand down, and shout out to Miguel. He also brings his feet together. Miguel Class on Expo pointed this out. And a hook, just boop, right on top, on the button. Put him down. Just knocked him out. A couple follow-up shots later, and the ref's pushing him off. It's funny, the ref grabs Charles Johnson and pulls him off because he's 125, you know. Yeah, you know, you just can't let your guard down like that. Like, pun intended, you can't let your guard down. But, you know, Lonnie Kavanaugh can't let this, like, bother him at all. You know, Joshua Venn, as I mentioned earlier, has the exact same thing happen for him. He's fighting for a title with Alexandre Pantoja in his next fight. One fight doesn't define you, and in fighting sports, like Floyd Mayweather kind of hurt that with the whole 50-0, and we're kind of moving away from that in boxing now. But like in MMA, it's still the thing. Like, you're not undefeated. Khabib was 29-0, but nobody ever is 29. Zhang Mingyang was like 5-7 at the start of his career, or something like that. Had a horrible record. Lonnie Kavanaugh 9-1 now. Like, you're far from being a terrible fighter. Trust me, you will come back and be great. I do think Lonnie Kavanaugh is a really good contender at 125, and I hope this doesn't rattle him too much because it was a clean knockout and some pretty brutal follow-up shots. Whew, that one was rough. I'll be honest with you guys. I was kind of, I was hoping Lonnie got it done. Rong Zhu defeated Austin Hubbard. Austin Hubbard, you know, as good as he is, 16-10 now. Like, where does he go? Rong Zhu's a fun fighter, but like 3-all in the skid, 4 out of his last 5. Ultimate Fighter finale, and since the Ultimate Fighter, he's come back, beat Aaron McKenzie, Roosevelt Roberts, but then like loses to Kurt Holloway in the final. Figlak, loses to Hernandez, Markel Meridos, and then Rong Zhu. Like, Austin Hubbard, man, it's time to do that. And Rong Zhu's actually become fairly good run. That loss to Ignacio Bahamondes I love so much. Felipe Maya, a couple wins here. Chris Badilla, he, after coming off a road to UFC, he finally gets Cody Steele he beat, and then Austin Hubbard. Now, Hubbard's a good win, probably the best one he's got to date. Kyle Dawkins turned off the chin of Michelle Pereira. Pretty ugly, guys, if we're being honest here. Michelle Pereira, thoroughly washed. Chin's just cracked, and Kyle Dawkins, welcome back. He was cut from the UFC for 2 straight losses. He lost to Brendan Allen, beat Stolfus, which is a good win. Lost to Phil Hawes, which is unexcusable. No contest to Holland. What happened there? Was that the weed fight? Accidental headbutt. Okay, never mind. Beats Jamie Pickett, another good win. Then loses to Roman Dolidze, which you get kneed in the clinch and you're knocked out by Dolidze. That's a problem. And then Eric Anders, but comes back and loses to Eric Anders in a grappling match. That's funny. CFFC just keeps racking up the wins. Finally gets a call back to the UFC to fight Michelle Pereira. What happened there? Was Pereira supposed to be booked to fight somebody else? Oh yeah, Marcos Tulilo. That's what it was. Okay. Great to see Kyle Dawkins back. He was really good. Yisha, if I'm saying that right, beat Weston Wilson. Weston Wilson goes so many miles halfway around the world, 37 seconds, and get knocked out. Doesn't belong in the UFC. Su Young Tu, Yu Tu Young versus Long Zhao. I'm sorry, guys, I can't say these names. And then Uran Saltadabayev and the other guy. I'm struggling in here. That was really cool. Ezekiel choke, kind of locked it in. Real good key to it is getting your fist into the aorta and really making life miserable. So your arm and then your fist, real big man stuff. So at the end of the day, decent night of fights, guys. I was entertained, or decent morning of fights actually. I was entertained. And Johnny Walker, here's to the future. Maybe you can make a title run. That would be kind of cool. You know the drill, guys. Fight Finders episode 7's out. I'm storyboarding episode 8, which is something new. I've never storyboarded before. I kind of figured as I'm going. But episode 8 is going to be real cool. Boxing in New Orleans. If you made it this far, you're the king. Subscribe. All the whole 9 yards. I've gotten my memberships down there. You can sign up for membership and get early access to the upcoming Mikhail Alexachuk video that's coming out. And you will get access to all of my exclusive stuff, which I'm working on. So, later.